We are live.
Hi.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I believe we're live. You know, want to verify? Val, can you verify for us?
I can.
All right.
Like,
All right, there we go.
Yeah,
Verified.
there we are.
All right.
Okay, good.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you happen to be in the world. I am J. Todd Coleman.
And I'm Melissa Preston.
And I am the creative director of Crowfall.
And I'm the art director.
And we're going to talk to you today about all sorts of stuff.
Hey, what about me? I'm here.
I gave you a chance. You just sat looking at the camera. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit today about lore. So lore's been a real interesting thing, I think, to work on through the course of this game, because it's not like we set out day one. I mean, we did have to like initially say, here's the list of gods, but the personalities of those gods was kind of ill-formed, and so it's been something that we've kind of grown into.
Right.
So usually those conversations tend to happen. Interestingly enough, it's not a design conversation. It usually happens in the art room, right? And part of that, I think, is because number one, you're super into the lore, and so you understand it, and you and I have a really good ability to kind of gel on it real quick.
Well, also for it, not just the players, but I think for the artists especially, having that kind of lore gives us some boundaries to kind of work with to sort of like feed in some interesting details that actually make sense.
Right,
or
to chew the scenery.
Tie to something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I also think it's because it's helpful to have Dave and Nick in the room because they're so fast at generating concepts that they can very quickly, like, what do you think of this? And we're like, that's amazing. And it's almost always, that's really amazing.
Yeah.
But we have done a lot of exploration, some of which these guys have never even seen, that may not even surface in the game necessarily.
Well, and that's what's, I think, challenging for our game specifically is, you know, like a lot of games where they have the lore or the storyline is sort of built in as part of your experience. Yeah. We're a little bit disconnected because it's happening on a different level and doesn't necessarily play out, you know, in the game.
Yeah, we don't have quests,
right,
so.
The game is revolving around the players in the game. But this lore, I think, is one of the things that sort of like helps you as a player sort of feel connected and tie in with our world. Yeah,
definitely. Right? I like the idea that our basic approach is that players are going to write their own stories, and what we're doing is crafting a universe that has a certain amount of believability to it, so that they can use that as a jump-off point, right, for how they're going to craft their story.
Right.
So
Hashtag war stories. You need to pimp that out. Get people to share their war stories.
What is that about?
Hashtag war stories. Hashtag Crowfall game. Need to see those on the Twitter. I know that there are other people who are playing in the campaigns besides Ja and Winterblades, but you know, if Ja's the only person who's sharing his war stories, you're going to be hearing the tale of Ja for the next week. So get your war stories up. We want to see them. Share them with me. There you go. Sorry. Shameless plug.
To say blazon.
Oh.
Share.
He does some. It's just
Blazon, share your war stories. Rufio, share your war stories.
Onrez does time to time.
Onrez does.
He's pretty good about that. Mostly, as you can imagine, his are economy related. But I'm fine
with that. They're showing the layers. Of
I almost always retweet that stuff as well, right? When somebody tags me on it, so tag me as well, and I'll give it a little signal boost if I can.
Yeah, Onrez one time said that when you retweet things, it's like when your dad hangs your artwork on the refrigerator.
Oh, that's kind of sweet. So.
There you go. Sorry to interrupt, but I just had to get that war story mentioned in there.
So in the very beginning, when we sat down and did the Pantheon, right, we kind of came up with what the personality types were, and then we broke them out initially into order, balance, chaos. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we've done lately and how we've shifted that? Like our big charts and all that kind of stuff?
Right. So we had at one point, and we don't have an image for this, so I'm going off script a little bit. We had an image that showed the family tree sort of with Valcon at the top of it.
Yeah. That's old now.
That is really old. So we were talking about how Valcon fit in and how Hero fit in and where basically sort of like the structure of how these sort of characters or the gods sort of related to each other. So I put together a couple images. I'm jumping ahead a little bit.
I'm not going to follow a script. I don't know why they put a script in front of me. So.
And we're calling it the before corruption and then we have the after corruption piece. So there it is. There you go. So this before corruption piece. So you can see sort of like the relationship, and you can see that sort of like horizon line of the core characters. I think I always think of them as the core characters.
Yeah.
Sibel and Yaga being core mostly because of how they sort of tie in and relate to Gaea. But then Arkin and Cain also sort of there's a thread there with Gaea, and so we were talking about how these characters sort of related with each other, and also sort of how they align in terms of like good, neutral, and evil. And we started talking about like what it would be interesting to put them in sort of a classic D&D sort of structure.
Right, with the you've got law versus lawful versus chaotic, and you've got good versus evil.
Right.
And what would that matrix look like? Right. That's kind of where this started.
That's where this started. Yeah. And we started moving a little bit away from the whole like the lawful good, and because it didn't really fit for us as much.
So actually, that's a good thing to talk about. So you can tell on this chart right here, right? Instead of it being law, balance, and chaos, we've shifted to sun, earth, and moon, and that's actually
and also glory, wealth, and power.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So the sun, earth, and moon shift is really cosmetic more than anything else. Underneath the covers, it's still order, balance, and chaos. The challenge that we had is, and this probably wouldn't bug anybody else in the world as much as it bugs me, but it's constantly bugged me. As I was doing a write-up at one point, I think it was the Frostweaver backstory, and I realized that we have a handful of the gods that are kind of sun-themed, right? And we had considered those the order gods. And then on the other side, we had a handful of gods that were moon-themed, and we considered those the chaos gods. And that's a very like Star Warsian kind of thing, right? The idea that light is good and darkness is bad.
Right.
The problem is it doesn't actually work like when I'm trying to build a magic system, which, again, I realize almost no one out there in the world is going to care about but me, but I care that it resonates and makes sense. It occurred to me that the sun is actually about as chaotic as you can get. It is not orderly at all. It's a big writhing mass of sun and of flame and gas and whatever the hell, plasma, I don't know, whatever the sun's made of. And then you got the moon over here, which is basically like dead and unchanging and cold. So
it's very static.
It felt like to me we had a basic problem, which was that we had equated the sun with law and the moon with chaos, when in actuality they were flipped. So what I wanted to do was start to go ahead and accept that that's part of the lore, but most people won't get that when they come in because we've been trained that the good side is always light and the black hats are always bad. I mean, like that's the basic understanding that we have. So I wanted to flip it, and the way to flip it was, well, let's just not surface that. Let's bury the lead on that, and let's make it sun, earth, and moon, and that perfectly fits our pantheon, right?
Well, and I think at one point too, you had described sort of like how the universe was created, essentially. So we've got this Valcon image that shows, and you described it to me as well, I think you should describe it because I'm a terrible storyteller. I always go like, there's this guy, and this happened at one time. No, it wasn't that guy. It was this other guy, and there was like this thing. Yeah, I'm terrible. You could tell.
So the first guy then was Valcon.
So the first guy was Valcon.
And the other thing
there's the image.
was the dragon.
Was the dragon.
And that's you can't see it as well, but that's actually a dragon mouth. So yeah, this goes back to our origin story of the entire universe, which is that originally in the time before time, it was just this big kind of chaotic mess, and there was no real concept of time and space, but you did have these entities that were kind of more concepts than anything else that are all floating around in the ether, and somehow the concept of Valcon bumps into the concept of the dragon and decides to just ravage it. He's just like, I'm going to rip its heart out, and then I'm going to steal its egg, and then I'll hang the heart over here, and that'll be the sun, and I'll hang the moon, the egg over here, and that'll be the moon, and I'm going to twist this dragon up, and that's going to create the dome of the heavens. And
I remember having this conversation and the horrified look on Melissa's face, like she felt so sorry for the dragon.
Oh my God, Melissa has made it so much worse, by the way, now. I'm just going to say, because we were talking about the lineage of Zelena, where Zelena comes from, and because Zelena is the daughter of the dragon, and Melissa was like, well, I was assumed it was that Valcon was actually the father. And I'm like, that's even more horrible. Like,
well, he is a big asshole.
He's a pretty terrible asshole.
Yeah,
so,
really,
but I like it. So I think we're gonna go with Melissa
for
he is the worst. It's absolutely true. He was not meant to be a like like a likable version of Zeus or Odin.
Was Zeus a likable version of Zeus?
There
think he
are
had
some
dragon
stories. There's
But
he
he had
showed
some-
up as like a random goose at one point. It was like
Yeah.
I got to get me some of that goose. So yeah, no, he showed up as a golden shower at one point to somebody, which I always thought was a weird thing. I don't think it,
So let's get back
don't
to
think it
something you know.
translates.
Let's
Well,
get back
but
to
I
what-
think
Look,
the
I
point-
didn't write this mythology.
I think the point,
Val.
though, is that our pantheon is very similar to Greek mythology.
And
Yes.
it's very heavily Greek
Yeah.
and Norse,
Right.
and also I took elements of Egyptian and
Right.
Celtic as well.
But
right?
we have quote unquote good and evil, but really there's no a real sense of like they're not necessarily good in terms
Yeah.
of like the players or the humans or the characters. I mean,
So
they have
my
their
thought
own,
was
they have
just
their own
like,
agenda.
yeah, like we're going to separate them in law and chaos and evil and not quite as evil was
Right.
my thought. That's the spectrum. Is they're all terrible people. Like just all of the gods are out for their own self-serving interest. So okay, so we started with this cross section thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then. It occurred to us that there was an event that happened sometime later, and we're kind of fuzzy on when exactly it happened. But the one thing we do know is that Gaea died, which I just love as an idea. The idea that the Earth Mother just was killed, because you want to talk about a screwed universe. If the Earth Mother is dead, it's all over. Like, there's no saving this universe. That's a spoiler alert for you, for people who are thinking that someday the crows will get together and solve this problem. You're not gonna. They're screwed. You're just screwed. The universe is screwed. The Earth Mother's dead. So we decided
But
that
please play Crowfall.
you should. But hey, man, Breaking Bad. No spoilers there, but things don't always have to end pretty to be great stories. I'm just saying. Just saying. So. You've got that quadrant, right? You got the four. So we
Yeah.
decided that we would then do another version of it to say what happens after the death of Gaea. Like, how does it change the relationship and even the personalities of the gods? Because Sybil, Gaea, and Yaga are the Trinity goddess, right? So it is the maid, the matron, and the crone. They're all literally kind of three aspects of the same god. And if the middle aspect dies, that can't be good for the younger and the older aspect.
Right.
So.
Well, how did you describe Yaga too? Originally, they're each part of sort of like the cycle of life.
Yes,
right?
yes. So yeah, so they totally are. So the maid is represented with new growth, new birth, new life, right? And then Gaia is kind of planting and harvesting, and the entire, like, the kind of mature life, right? Thriving life. And then Yaga is death and has a touch of rebirth as well, right?
Right.
But she is kind of our Grim Reaper harvester, right?
But isn't inherently evil. That's just part of the cycle.
No,
Yeah.
she wasn't inherently
Right,
evil.
that's why they're on
but
the neutral.
Yeah, but
spectrum.
post
Yeah.
post, it's not. It didn't
Yeah.
go well for any of them,
Right,
right?
right.
So do you want to bring up the post one?
Sure.
You want to take a look
Yeah,
at
there's
that?
the
Okay, so
after. There you
in
go.
the post, what we did is we kind of took that line, that middle line,
Mm-hmm.
and we broke it and we shifted it. So it basically broke from a balanced spectrum into two parts. And so that breaking kind of shot it left and right? So
Right.
so now you've got a line between Sybil and Yaga that lines up kind of from the sun down to that crow symbol, and then you've got a new line that is established between Valcon and Alara, which is interesting. We'll talk about that one as well. But the main pivot there is on Arkan and Cain, because it broke the two of them, right?
Well, and I don't know if anyone really knows truly what happened there. I mean, there's some lore on the website that describes it like very vaguely, but
Okay.
I don't think it's very clear. And I don't know how many people really know about that sort of triangle.
Yeah, so we do have the things that are established in the lore for sure is that Arkan and Gaia were married, right?
Right.
And they were the progenitor of many of the races. Humans obviously is a big one. The Elkin, I think, is also one as well, because Dorian is their offspring. Which why I don't know. Because mythology. Because deer heads are cool. Deer life. So okay. So then you have Cain, who is the twin to Arkan, born just before or just after. I can't actually remember. Somebody on the chat will probably tell us if he was the
Who was
older
born
or the
after?
younger. I can't remember which one.
Arkan was
Oh yeah,
young.
no, he is. He's
Arkan.
slightly younger. So something happened between Gaia and Cain. And we are not sure. We know that we have now the race of Stoneborn as a result, right? Because Cain is basically, lives on the moon. Arkan lives on the sun. So Cain is very stone-oriented, right? Whereas Gaea is all tree and life and rooty, right? So you've got this race of the Stoneborn, which are stone golem-y dwarves with big tree beards. Something happened there. We have never been very specific on what it was. The dwarves seem to be, they seem to be a little ashamed by the whole thing, and as a result of that, at some point, something happened and Gaea died. So that is something that I purposefully left very open. Is was there an accident? Did Cain kill her? Did she die in childbirth? Did Arkan get really pissed off? Or Arkan get pissed off and he killed her? Did she kill herself? Like, we've left it open. We don't know.
Or is it something related to the hunger?
Or is it something? Well, we know definitely that's when the hunger started.
Right.
And that's when the world started to get infected. So I kind of had purposely left that open because I thought it would be great to have some big glaring holes in the mythology to give players a chance to fill in those holes and argue why they believe they were right.
Right.
Right? So.
Can we bring that after piece up too again? There's something else that I think was interesting as we were looking at this. We broke them apart, so there's nobody sort of on the neutral line any longer. We're breaking these characters up, and you can see these connecting points right here, these lines that thread these characters to each other. But then, as we moved Kronos, Valcon, and Yaga sort of out to the sides also, it created this little pyramid in the middle, and there's something we haven't actually explored in the game yet, but there's something we've explored in concept that we've never actually even talked about.
Which is the Watcher?
Which is the Watcher.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that we've ever...
Do you have any of
There's
the
a Watcher. There should be a Watcher image in there.
Yeah, so that was one of the early ones. What I liked about this shot is it looks like the cover of like a Michael Moorcock novel from the 1970s, which is just freaking awesome. In fact, I actually thought it was one recently. I forgot that this is Dave's, right? Yes. I forgot. I was like, I remember that image from some book. Oh no, wait, that's just a Dave.
That's ours.
Image. That's ours. Yeah.
Dave, just a Dave
image. So so the three original gods, right? So we have Valcon, the Allfather. Yaga was actually his sister, and Kronos is his brother. So he's the first, but they're the ones that weren't really. They're the elder gods. They were not born of Valcon. They're basically born at the same time. So does that mean they were also entities, or did they jump out of his head or something? I don't know. Never has been said. But that kind of also elevates them as another trinity. And so the sliding these things around, we already had this idea of this big pyramid thing that Kronos was sending to effectively watch every world as it dies. Like, his job is now, he owns time and space, and so here we are at the end of time. I guess I should chronicle this because somebody might care someday. And so that was his thing, was just kind of chronicling the end of the universe. And so we had this idea of the pyramid, the Watcher as a pyramid. We hadn't done anything with it.
Not really.
We have you probably didn't put this in there because I didn't think about it, but the one shot that we had with the pyramid, the three sides with the three eyes.
You can kind of see it in the top of that image. There's one side of it, but we did explore a little bit more. The three different sides would sort of represent the past, present, and future.
Yeah, and then we also had one of them was like overgrown with vines, and one of them was made of stone, and one of them was made of metal, which was kind of cool, tying into our sun, earth, and moon theme again. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff there for us to jump off into. We're kind of squaring off the property to say, okay, well, eventually we might build a wing onto the building over here. I don't think that a lot of this stuff will be surfaced by launch, but knowing it now means that we can kind of angle ourselves and also not paint ourselves in a corner to be able to expand into that later.
Well, also, I think going back to why this is meaningful for the player. For me, I found myself, every time I would get into the game, I'm just like, whatever random faction banner pops up, I'll just go into that. Because I really didn't have any real connection to any one faction or another.
Sure.
So I think this will help you to sort of identify, if you think of Game of Thrones, there's these different houses and there's these different characters, and generally you kind of pick a favorite, or you pick somebody you feel kind of connected with, or you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's a way for you to feel a part of this world, and to give you a sense of, okay, well, if we have sun, earth, and moon, and we have glory, wealth, and power. So loosely, I mean, you could go after all three. You could be someone who's like, I just want to be sort of a merchant prince and create like this wealth economy in my EK. Maybe you would pick then the Earth faction to kind of follow in one of those gods, because they tie more closely to sort of that part of the game.
Yeah, sure.
Right? You're not necessarily tied to. You don't have to.
You don't have
choose
to.
That,
Yeah, it's
but
there
it gives
for
you
people
sort
who
of a-
want it, and the
gives you
people who
some-
don't can kind of.
Yeah, you can pick
not
whatever
worry.
you want, but it's a good, I feel like, way for players to sort of feel connected with this world and you know, like find out a little bit more about the gods, find out how they're connected, and it gives you somebody sort of to attach to.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned the glory, wealth, and power, and that actually was kind of a happy accident, right?
Yeah.
Is once we had set up Sun, Earth, and Moon as kind of our major celestial spheres, it occurred to was it Debbie Sue? I remember? Did you see who said it originally?
What's
was it
that?
Debbie Sue who mapped it to glory, wealth, and power?
Loosely,
Maybe.
yes.
So, because I actually think it fits perfectly, right?
Yeah.
Because the sun obviously can have an element of it, which is glory, right? You've got
Right.
the idea, I mean, whenever they do like religious paintings, they always do like majestic halos coming off of the head, right?
Right.
There's a definite like idea of the sun being glorious,
Mm-hmm.
right? Wealth fits perfectly to Earth because you have the bounty of the Earth, right?
Right.
A cornucopia is overflowing with the
Right.
bounty of the Earth, and that's the idea of wealth. And then lastly, the moon has long been associated with power, usually dark power. But so those things, I mean, you got werewolves, and you know, there's a whole bunch of things that tie in there as well. So I actually love that the original idea that we had of what are my three major beats that we're going for, glory, wealth, and power, map perfectly to our celestial spheres of sun, earth, and moon. That's
like we
just
did it on purpose.
It's like we did on purpose. That was not that part particularly was not originally intended, but it actually works really, really well.
It works really well.
So
Now, somebody has asked, where does Hero fit in with all of this?
So
Very good
that is
question.
an excellent question. So
that
bring
was
up the
Mandalore.
chart
Good
again.
job,
Actually, this
Mandalore.
is going to be kind of interesting. Bring up the after chart, if you would. So the after chart, you will notice, doesn't have Hero on it anymore.
Neither does the before, actually.
And the before doesn't either. So a few things as we've really delved into this have kind of come out of it. And one of them is that Hero has been downgraded to a demigod, right? Hero is not actually a god of Valcon because he was born as a mortal, right? He's not of the line of Valcon at all.
Yeah.
He's not of the line of dragon, so he is outside the normal realm. So the comic that we did way back in the day that we're going to go back and revisit talks about the kind of basic arc of a crow, right? So I think we're going to go back now and fill that out to have more depth and information and make that into the story of Hero, the first
The
crow.
very first crow.
And
Yeah.
so that was the basic thought there, is that initially, for whatever reason, he of all the mortals was chosen to be blessed / cursed to live life after life after life after life, fighting endlessly on behalf of the gods, which I
Yeah.
think is a really kind of cool idea. That blows out then into, once that curse or blessing was established, it became a loophole that all of the gods could use to start selecting champions, and that's where our crows come from.
Right.
So for that reason, he fell out of the pantheon. We're going to need to now create another area, which is for demigods. It does mean, though, that it opens up an opportunity for us post-launch to start coming up with other demigods, which I think would be really cool as
Yeah.
well, right? You've got the demigods is a cool concept, right? The Perseus, Hercules,
Right.
kind of, you know, these are
Maybe
mortals.
players could elevate to become demigods.
And that would be pretty
in
cool.
The future.
Absolutely. That would be something that would be really cool for us to grow
Val's
into.
shaking her head like,
Yeah.
please, why did you just
See,
do
this
that?
is how it starts, folks. It's Melissa's fault. That's scope creep. It starts in art, and that's where so that is actually a really good point, though, is if somebody makes an idea that they bring up that's really good, and then the art team starts to actually draw it out, it becomes very, very hard to resist putting into the game. So that's why our new mantra is post-launch. That sounds
Well-
great, and we will explore that post-launch. So...
Well, but that is something we have sort of talked about. I mean, the new temple, which I'm kind of jumping into a little bit.
Of course you are.
It's not quite done yet. We're working on it right now. John O'Neill is finishing up right now, and you will start seeing it in the game pretty soon. So in the God's Reach, there's going to be a pristine version of this temple. So it is outside of the reach of the hunger and generally more intact. And the architecture there is of the Stoneborn. They're the most ancient race.
Yep.
And so there are these structures that you'll see around the world that are built by them.
Which, being the most ancient race, by the way, implies that something was going on with Gaea and Cain for a while.
Right.
It's not. It wasn't a new thing that happened just before the cataclysm.
Sure.
It implies that maybe that, but time doesn't make a lot of sense with the gods anyway. Things are not necessarily ordered in time. So, are you going to show this new temple, Ms. Preston?
We do have a couple images. I think we should showcase it a little bit more later on, but we do have a couple images that John gave us.
Cool. Oh, so these are concepts. These
Yeah,
are
these
some
the
early concepts. So you guys have been playing actually in a gray box version
Right.
of the temple for a while.
Right.
So this will look familiar to you.
So this is kind of what we're calling sort of the Coliseum part of it. And so there's the work in progress right now.
So that's the 3D one.
Yeah. And
So
then
you can see it actually, it's pretty true to the concept. Now this one though, this is still the destroyed, right? Because you've got all the ground poking up through it and then the stuff
So
like that.
we're working on having a differentiation between them. But we also have the notion that each faction will have a slightly different looking temple to begin with too. So
Sun, Earth, and Moon
The Sun,
themed.
Earth, and Moon. So we have, this is one of the market images. So this is what the market would look like on the other side of the temple. So this will be the Earth one. And then, and I think the last one was the Sun, and that's the Moon one. So we'll theme them differently. You'll have the faction banners hanging everywhere, and they'll have just slightly different
propping
decor,
out, right?
Propping out, yeah. And then we have
And then the god statues. That's going to be significantly different,
That's true.
right?
I'm glad you said that. Yeah. So each one of them will have the giant god statues sort of in the middle of them. And if you're playing right now, you've probably seen one or two of them already. So that's Arkan. And that's the bell. So we'll have all the sun gods, all the moon gods, all the earth gods. Dorian. Yeah, they're underway right now.
The Yaga one's
We've
awesome.
got a few of them.
I love
the
what's it, the Mave concept one is really cool.
The Maeve one is going to be
that's
probably
really cool.
one
Is
of my
that in here
favorites.
too?
That's Alara. She's actually done. Frank made this one. She's amazing. That one's super cool. So I was going to get at was, and in the campaign worlds, there will be a destroyed or more ruined version.
Yes, correct.
Because that is within the reach of the hunger, and it's got a little bit more, it's falling apart. It looks like it's been degraded a little bit, so that you'll have sort of a visual sort of distinction
right?
Which world you're in, or which band you're in.
I like that too because it immediately reminds me of which type of world I'm in, right? Immediately I'm like, oh, I'm okay, this is God's Reach, this is kind of my in-between spot, or, oh yeah, that's right, I'm in a campaign world.
Yeah.
So I need to, I think that stepping in that place, your general stress level should go up a little bit.
You mentioned the hunger, we've talked about it a few times, and Nocturnal Demise had a question about how does the hunger threaten the gods? How are the gods affected by the hunger?
So the idea that we had, and we did this way back, right, is we had the world bands, that one image that had like the different areas of the worlds, and the EKs were on the outside. They were the furthest from the hunger, so they were the most protected. My thought is that band is probably where, the gods are kind of hanging at the outskirts of the universe because they're like, oh shit, I'm going to back up from that as far as I can get.
Yeah.
So the God's Reach, the idea there is that is the furthest extent of their power. It's just inside of where they can stave off the hunger. And then beyond that, everything else, which I think is a better use of the term God's Reach than what we'd originally intended it for, right?
Yeah.
It is still within the reach of the gods. So the gods are basically screwed by it and scared by it, is the basic thought. So at some point, the thought that we had was that Valcon went past God's Reach, actually went to go all right, children, settle down, I'm gonna go deal with this shit, and basically has never come back. So the fact that he still is in theory answering prayers, you can still draw magic off of him, implies that he's not completely dead. But then again, Gaia's spells are still working too. So my thought on that was just that the gods are so powerful that it takes a while for their blood to cool. With Gaea, literally her blood is the lava inside the earth. It is the molten rock under the earth. And the Stoneborn were tasked with keeping those fires going.
Right. Yeah.
And those are also slowly cooling down and turning to dust as the hunger takes everything over. So that was the basic thought there, is the gods are also screwed by it. They don't know what to do about it. And in typical childlike fashion, what they should be doing is getting together and saying, we got a big problem, guys, we got to all deal with this. But instead, they're squabbling over the inheritance. So, okay, so there you go. What else do we have? Did we get to show any of the other, did we show any of the screenshots of the temple?
Yeah, there were a couple that were mixed in.
Oh, were there?
To that. Yeah, that's why I think once we actually get it fully in the game and...
Okay, there you go.
Out,
So,
yeah. So there's a couple of the statues. There's Valcon and Archon. So this would be an example of the Sun Temple. You can see the banners that are hanging up, and that sort of like tree root sort of structure in the background is where the rune gates are at. And so do you want to explain sort of the original concept behind why these roots are kind of exposing and like breaking away and out of these walls?
Right. Okay. So that is a thought that we had about the, so we've got the dwarves, right? And the dwarves, or the Stoneborn, the thought that we had is that they actually have stone for flesh, and that their nervous system is a series of roots. So if you were to break one apart, it wouldn't be filled with blood. It would actually just be a bunch of stone, maybe some mud, and a big root structure that kind of goes, and that's how they articulate. And then it's kind of popping out here on their face, like it's just kind of growing through.
Yeah.
And so you can see that, and actually it's come out really cool. Like the characters look really awesome.
Yeah.
You can see it even more so in the Sentinels, which
Right.
we have shown once before in the past, but have not made it into the game yet.
Right.
So that shot, can you bring up the shot again that had the brazier in the middle with the two statues? So one of the thoughts that we had is that we're going to move those braziers. Well, you can actually see braziers at the base of the two statues there, right? So eventually I would like the sacrifice system to, right now it clearly wasn't, it's clearly not final because you walk up and it's a picture of Malachi. It's not like everybody in the game is going to be sacrificing to Malachi. So what I wanted to have was separate braziers for you to sacrifice to the god of your choice, and that you can get some kind of cool buff or something out of doing that.
Right.
And then in the middle there, we're going to put the Sentinel. You want to talk about them? Did we have any screenshots of them?
I don't know that I put any images of the Sentinel because I didn't know if we wanted to talk, or if you actually even talked about that yet.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't give you any warning.
Okay. So feel free to talk about the Sentinel.
You talk about the Sentinel.
Well, so each temple will have a Sentinel that's themed to that temple. But each one of them is a little bit different. They are themed to the Sun, Earth, and Moon temples.
And they're Stoneborn.
And they're
kind of
Stoneborn,
important,
yeah.
But they're super, super ancient.
You're right. And they'll sort of, I mean, they will be the ones who you kind of interact with initially.
Yeah,
right?
so that was the thought, is
Yeah.
that this gives us a place that eventually, we have nothing right now for players to interact with other than like vendors, is we're going to want
Right.
something,
Yeah.
right?
That's why I
And-
wasn't sure if we were ready to.
Yeah, well, and
really.
what that's going to be, I'm not ready to talk about because
Yeah.
we're not quite sure yet, right?
Right.
But if we want to tie in stuff that deals with the gods in the campaigns, which I definitely want to do, I want to be able to have the gods have more of an impact in the game.
Yeah.
They needed some way to interact with the player, and so we went down a couple roads with this. If you recall, we did some testing, like how should the gods interact with the players? It seemed very pedestrian to have like just voice of Malachi in my head saying, hey, go do this mission for me. Like that seemed really goofy. And then we did a test at one point, which I thought was actually pretty damn cool, where we had Doggett animate one of the statues. Do you remember that?
Well, we were
it was
looking
very
at,
Clash of the
Clash
Titans.
of the Titans.
It's like
Talos.
This big old statue turning and looking at you. It was actually really cool. So that may make an appearance at some point later, but I'd like to save it because I think if it happened all the time, it would look like an animatronic Santa, and I just think that would be bad. But occasionally doing it
You
would
walk
be
up
kinda,
and they just kind of do
hello, I'm a robot. Yeah, that's not what we
Welcome
wanted.
to the State Fair of Texas.
Yeah, exactly. But Jason and the Argonauts, that's a very Texas analogy for you.
Yeah, but everyone in Texas knows the State Fair of Texas.
Okay, fair enough.
I was
That's-
thinking Disneyland, Disney World,
so we can get the deep fried
Animatronics.
Twinkies, right?
I think you can get deep fried butter.
everything.
Deep fried
yeah.
butter on
You
a
can
stick?
get deep fried butter on a
Deep
stick.
fried butter.
Yeah.
That's like a heart attack. You can die with a smile on your face, though.
Yeah.
I love
So-
butter.
Can we take some questions?
Did we finish on the last bit?
Yeah. I think
So the Sentinels
for
in the
most
center,
part,
that gives
yeah.
us a jump off point.
Right.
We're going to have the sacrifice braziers be sacrificing to that particular god.
Yeah.
If we do end up doing, and I don't think that we would make it specific, like you could choose. So you could walk up and check the different gods and say, oh, this one is offering this right now. I'm interested in sacrificing there or whatever. So that it's still a little fuzzy. We haven't quite figured out the details on that.
Yeah.
I've got that design challenge we hit all the time where I'm like, I think it should be really cool if they're themed to the god. But then my choice choice is now about the buff that I'm going to get or the reward, not the god, and I hate that.
Yeah.
So it may be that what we have to do is have them give you a currency that you can then spend so the reward is disconnected. I don't know yet. We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea, and the new temple looks awesome. So kudos to you and to
Mr.
Nick
John
and to John O'Neill
Yeah.
on that. And actually, Rudy and Aaron, like everybody, there's a lot of people. The
That's
statues
true.
are
Yeah.
the character
It takes
guys.
a
So
It does.
it takes a village of artists.
Yeah, but it will
So-
be coming soon. You will see
Okay,
it soon.
so does that wrap that up? Enough, Debbie Sue, for you? Are you okay now? Can we move on, please?
Yes.
Okay, we're moving on. I'm on page 1 of my script, by the way. I have not flipped a single page.
I'm trying to like
Okay.
Keep us on track.
somewhat on track.
All right.
Zippin, Zyphon, Zippone. If you want me to pronounce your name right, make it easier to pronounce. Said, in the sense of history, how long has Gaia been dead? Since the beginning of the world, or was it at the start of the apocalypse?
It was definitely the start of the apocalypse. How long ago that happened, though, I've left it purposefully vague because I just didn't. I felt like it was one of those things that was better to not specifically answer.
Right.
Like I have a general feeling in storytelling, especially when you're trying to build a mythology, that too much detail it's like cilantro. Just too much of it spoils the whole meal. Like the whole thing is just done. I'm done
I'm a
now.
big fan of cilantro.
Up to a point, though, right?
I don't know.
Would you just eat it? Well, you'll eat
I
a stick of
have.
fried butter, so you know. So yeah, it's just too much of it. I thought would. Well, Highlander is like my go-to example on this. The first movie was amazing, and they're like, now let's explain things. No, no, let's go back to when that didn't exist and that wasn't a thing. So,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, it's terrible. So that was my basic thought on that, was to leave it kind of unknown.
Okay, and Mandalore said he needs to know which gods are the high elven gods so Solian can invoke their name for RP purposes.
That is an
Okay, for
excellent
role-playing
question.
purposes.
So we do have the idea that the Mother Church is based off of Arkan, right,
Yeah.
as the sun god.
sun.
And their kind of deep and dirty secret is that their prayers are not really prayers. Their prayers are spells. And that they stole the pyromancy from the desert elves, right, from the sun elves. So we've gone that far, but I don't think necessarily we've gone much further into okay, well, let's look at those elves. We have sun elves, we have moon elves. What's their kind of thing? Like which gods are they specifically drawing their powers from? So I guess we need to probably explore it a little bit. I don't know that I want to give a specific answer on it right now, because we haven't really sat down and talked through what does the universe look like, from an Elven standpoint.
Right.
So it's probably a good idea to have that conversation.
We should have
though.
that. Yeah, we should take a look.
So part of this also is going, whenever we explore one of these, it's going back and looking at, well, what did we say? We wrote, these little short stories have been written,
Yes,
over a
I've
long
had
period
those
of time,
conversations
right?
with you.
And so I'm like, was that Zelina or was that Ilara? Or
But that is not uncommon from mythologies, where you'll have conflicting stories,
Right, for
Depending
sure.
on who's telling them or where they're coming from.
Yes,
Absolutely.
but they're all coming from Todd. and
Well,
they're
but I feel
conflicting.
like he wakes up on a daily basis and doesn't remember the day before.
That
It's like a
is-
new day.
That is true. I think that is partially
Opposite of
true.
Groundhog Day.
Every day it's actually the same one, but Bill Murray never realizes it. It's like, well, hello, Phil. How are you? Yeah, that's me. I'm living the same day over and over, but it's not hell. I don't realize it. I'm not learning from it. That was the whole point, right? You're supposed to learn from it, move on. No, never happens. I'm stuck here.
Okay, Kronk has a question. He said, what about the hitherto unknown animal goods?
Animal gods.
Animal gods?
Animal
Are
gods.
the war tribe races maybe their children, maybe humanoid versus playable animal race campaigns at some point?
So the animal gods, we've talked about these. Do you want to talk about these?
No, you can talk about them.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the animal gods are basically, my thought was originally that they are the concept level entities that exist in kind of the ether out there beyond the bounds of this universe, right? Is dragon, Valcon was basically the idea of man, right? Like that's why he looks like one, is he was the concept of man. Dragon is the concept of all serpents and dragons. Like she's the mother of all dragons. So all of the other animal gods would be that level of, like, you might have wolf, you might have owl, you might have whatever out there floating in the ether. And so they exist at a level well beyond the gods of this universe. They're up there on the level with Valcon and Dragon. And Alara is the only one who has figured out how to treat with them
I think
and
we have
exist.
one. I think we have the Alara concept.
Yeah, at the higher level. Alara has actually made contact with them, specifically the mother of cats.
Yeah.
And actually, this concept shows her kind of treating with all of the animals.
Right.
The original one had her with a cat, right? Which is why her symbol was the little mouse.
Yeah.
Though
we evolved her a little bit.
We've evolved her a little bit. But yeah, the idea is that she can see beyond this universe. And if there is a happy ending at all to this story, it will likely be hers, because I think that she is powerful enough that she could, when this universe is dead, she could probably create a new one the same way Valcon created this one. Like, she's that level of power. But she also just generally doesn't give a shit that this one's dying. Like, she doesn't care. Whatever. Clean
Yeah,
this
I
shit
remember
up.
we were working on the lore for her, and it's like, yeah, she knows how to fix it, but
Yeah,
she doesn't care.
she probably doesn't know how to fix it. She knows how to wipe the slate clean and start a new one. Not also a good story, though, for these characters, right? These characters are equally screwed. She's going to make a whole new universe in her own image. And it's not going to include any of this bullshit that Valcon did.
That's going to have a lot of cats.
It's going to be a cat universe.
So Blair will be a demigod.
Blair and Melissa will retire there when they die.
Okay, another question from
Heaven for
Arcade99.
cats.
Arcade99 wants to know, how will backer rewards like the name of fallen hero be integrated into the game?
They already are. So we already have, as campaign worlds come up, the random generator grabs from a giant table that is filled out with names that were actually submitted already by you guys. So I think it's not like there was a timer on the submissions. You can still submit. I think it probably goes to customer support. Gordon's going to come back later and tell me you told him the wrong thing, and now you've overloaded customer support, and I'm going to say, oops. But I think you can just put them in, and we can shuffle the names in, and then when new campaigns come up, it just grabs out of that list and pushes them in. So I think whether we've got the kingdoms in, and I think like Forest and other parcels like that, I don't think we have the name of fallen monarch. I don't think that's a thing yet. So when eventually I want the procedural world generator to grow into history as well, so that it starts actually dropping hints and information about, you know, this keep, who actually did it belong to and why is it here, like that kind of stuff. That's where the monarch stuff would come in, but we'll get to it. In the meantime, I'll probably just shuffle those names in as well, so that we can make sure we fulfill the reward. So,
and initially, when I came over to this project to begin with, that is what drew me in, though.
It was the lore?
Yeah.
Really?
More so than anything.
I'm
yeah.
surprised
and
by
I
that.
didn't believe that you wrote it.
yeah, that's true. Okay, so
Can I tell you that?
yeah, I know. And so I have a history of bringing Sam Johnson, our writer on Shadowbane, to projects. He worked on Shadowbane, and so all the initial lore was written by me, and then Sam came in, and he's just an amazing writer.
He's so good.
And as a result, everything I had written, people just assumed was done by Sam.
I thought Sam
which
wrote
is
it.
kind of a compliment, but also kind of sad and insulting at the same time. Because then I went over to King's Isle, and I did the same thing. I brought in Sam, and people are like, "Wow, Sam is amazing. All of this story is great." I'm like, I worked for years on the story before Sam got here, and they're like, nope, it's all
That's
Sam.
Sam's.
All Sam. He did all of it. So that's great. Again, great writer. Kind of a blessing and a curse. So this company, unfortunately, I just couldn't hire him because I would never get credit for any of my work. So at some point we'll probably work together again, I hope. But yeah. So you thought it was Sam's work? Did you think
Initially, yes,
hired-
but now I believe you.
You guys kill me.
When will
Whatever.
we see the Hippogriff in the game?
Yeah, what's up with my Hippogriff? I forgot. I made that. It was so amazing.
He's there. He's flapping around.
He's in the game?
No, he's not in the game. No.
We're saving him.
No. I'm not ready to talk about that.
Oh, you're not?
No.
All right.
There you go, Knox.
All
She's
right.
not ready to talk
Well,
about
actually, I will say we do have the Wyvern,
We do.
and
Yeah.
we've got a
They're
giant.
very large characters.
We've
What we
got
need
a
to do
problem
is
right now with large creatures.
We need to figure out how they work in our world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because we don't want to make them tiny big creatures.
Right, and that work is backed up behind the character controller work.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So, because it has to do with the capsules and
How
how
they
they
move around the
and
world.
all that stuff.
Right.
So, but there's a handful of monsters that are actually ready, just pretty much ready to go,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. So, anyway, so they're coming. working their way through the pipe like everything else.
Pimentandre, I'm sorry, I know I'm butchering your name. Will you make a big book or article about the lore so that we don't need to look through all of the articles? I think, isn't it all already on the website?
So I do want to expand on the comic that we did before. I actually purposefully wrote it that way. One, because it broke it into bite-sized chunks that I could do over time, because I am pretty damn busy around here. But the other is I liked the idea of building the universe mythology like a patchwork quilt with big holes where you have to kind of piece it together out of all these little pieces, and it kind of together amasses into an image that you can also kind of read between the lines and stuff like that. I like that idea. It would be kind of cool to, I don't know if there was a Kickstarter reward for that or not, but I do know that we have an art source book, right? So, and we have the comic. I think we have a CD that is supposed to have all the art on it.
The comic feels like a natural place to explore,
yeah,
to me, a lot of these like interactions.
But just taking and collecting all of the stuff that we do have, all the prose that we have, the writing that we have right now, we could certainly put it on that DVD with your art.
Yeah.
Or does that seem insulting to you? You don't want my prose anywhere near your beautiful, beautiful art. So, I mean, that would be a pretty easy thing to do.
I mean, it is on the like if you look at the Pantheon pages, there is a bit of that sort of built into each one of the descriptions of the gods.
It is kind of art work.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's sort of.
Writing
it's
is
kind
art.
of like art, right?
Yeah. Okay, so before we run out of time, I want to do a quick reminder.
I like the little pat on my head. Thank you, Val. Thank you. Val's always got my back.
I always have your
sort
back.
of, in a mocking way.
Your happiness is my sole priority in life.
Yeah, because of the paycheck involved.
Yes, because of the paycheck.
Right.
I'm not going to lie.
We're clear. Yeah, no problem.
Clear. Okay, so if you aren't already, follow us on this channel, on our Twitch channel, so that you can get notifications of when we go live. Also follow us at Crowfall Game on Twitter and Facebook. And don't forget the hashtag war stories, because we really, really, really want to see what you're doing. This is your history. It's our history. It's the history of Crowfall. And we want to save those stories, because 5 years from now, people are going to say, oh, I was there. And you can go, no, you weren't there, because I have a screenshot and there's a blank space where your face should be. So get those war stories in for us. And hashtag Crowfall Game and hashtag war stories, because that's how we will see them on the Twitters.
Cool. All right. We're wrapping it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the time, guys. We'll see you in game.